All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Gold Pill Podcast. I almost said I'm Amy. This is Meredith. I'm Meredith. This is Amy. And
Hi.
we are here with quantum languaging specialist and magical human, Dani Katz. Hi, Dani.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We're happy to talk to you. We were both really excited about it. We're like, I wonder what we're going to talk about with Dani. So, I've been curious for a while because I've been watching your content with Emily Moyer. You two do a really amazing series. It's one of my favorite things at this moment. And I was wondering,
Same.
what got you started on the path that you're on? What was your first real mystical experience?
My first real mystical experience would probably be my first psychedelic experience.
Awesome.
When I was 21. Although I have to say, I was always like kind of a mystical weirdo child.
Definitely.
I always wanted to be by myself. My favorite thing to do was I would always say I was meditating, even though I didn't know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
My dad would take me fishing, and I always wanted to be like alone, down away from him on the beach on a rock with like my eyes closed. And then I also used to always like to play witch with my friends and like draw weird symbols on the ground. Like I had no idea what I was doing.
Spooky, yes.
Yeah. But then I was super straight growing up because I was a gymnast. So I did my first psychedelic when I was 21. I did LSD, and I think that was the moment where I like clicked into like, oh, this is going to be my path, and this is going to be how I'm going to make incarnation work for me.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. I love the part about you reenacting your past lives on the beach. That's really funny. We don't know where this stuff comes from necessarily when we're young, but it's definitely there. So I'm glad that you had the psychedelic experience to almost like, it kind of solidifies, right? What you've always suspected maybe, or what you've always known, like on some level.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because I was always, I'm like hyper aware that I just put this in the past tense, but like I never felt quite right on this planet. Like I never really worked for me. And then when I did LSD, I was like, okay, this kind of works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, relates. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people in the Western world use that, have like an awakening or some sort of mystical experience the first time they take hallucinogens. And I think it's sort of a delayed initiation ritual for some groups of, I guess, college kids and other kids, but I swear I did it was in college for the first time. And I think it's really neat that the Western culture at least get some sort of understanding of that plane, I guess, right?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because I think we are starved for initiations and ritual. So it's kind of, like how we wing so many things in this culture. It's another thing that we wing.
That's a great point, because we really are starved in this country, especially like from maybe what our spiritual traditions or our roots could have been.
Yeah. Completely.
Some of the work that I love the most of yours is with Dr. Robert Forte over on Rumble, I believe currently, and it's with you and Emily on Words. And I guess Dr. Forte used to work with Timothy Leary, correct?
Yes.
And Timothy Leary, his big psychedelic into me. I'm sure a lot of people know who he is. Essentially, though, it was really hard for me once I started reading about all the psychedelic experiments that took place in the 40s, the 60s, and beyond. It sort of gave me a bad taste in my mouth about the things and the good things that I had done in college with the psychedelics. And I guess in a way, listening to that helped me discern that it was not like a black or white issue, and that there were still really great things to be gleaned by it. And so much of the thing that is the problem with the situation is that like a very certain type of person always intervenes in our culture and kind of wants to give you the experience like via his experience, or like tell you how it should be done. And by you pointing that out in those talks, it really helps me understand like, oh, like that was my issue with it. I didn't like that it was the programming that went with it, not the substance itself. And just helping me discern that was so helpful. And just knowing how to that reconciled in my mind. It was like, oh, okay, so here's the thing that's like really great about it. And the thing that's not necessarily like into my paradigm, which is like controlling other people's psychedelic experiences, is just that. And it's not a part, it's, you know, it's not the same thing. Those are two different aspects, you know, so thank you for that, by the way.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm glad that worked out for you.
Yes, yes. So I'm also thinking about that interview. So you and Emily both did a lot of gymnastics growing up. What do you think that, how do you think that played into kind of who you guys became today, which is two really smart, outspoken women, and I mean that in the most respectful way, that think super differently, just your own, like you're on your own path with like liberty and freedom, and you guys are so different in how you approach things, but yet you can meet in the middle. And I'm just wondering, like, what was in the Kool-Aid they were serving, I guess, during gymnastics? I don't know, what do you think was the thing about the gymnastics that really, I don't know, or maybe it was the hard work. What do you think it was that made you so who you are and so different and outstanding?
Well, thank you for calling me different and outstanding.
Obviously.
I mean, gymnastics was like our programming, right? Like that was where we were fucked with so hardcore. So both Emily and I, you know, we have that shared history. And I think because, you know, we had an Eastern European coach with a very different, like the way he coached us would not fly today at all. But I think it made it so that like for like we both rebelled so hard against him, and it was just like it was constant friction for me personally to stand up for myself and to stay authentic. And of course there's like the discipline of gymnastics and the hard work, and I think, you know, both Emily and I dig really hard for the truth, and that comes from that discipline of like, okay, I'm not finding it, keep looking. But I also think in terms of like, don't fucking tell me what to do, like we had, you know, we had the biggest obstacle there was to that, and I think that was really part of like what made us so hard to be programmed.
I love that. I love that.
It so hard.
That's awesome.
It's interesting. Oh, sorry, Amy. It's interesting to me how sometimes going through the exact opposite experience is what creates that like catapulting effect. I was in a relationship coming into 2020 that like really hammered down like emotional sovereignty and like what it means to not have anyone be able to, you know, fuck with how you're feeling, basically. And, you know, I learned that lesson kind of in like a very appropriate time, kind of coming out of that really controlling dynamic. And I think it's interesting how like, you know, because the rebel gene is alive in us. Okay. Like that's definitely one thing that we all share. And I think sometimes like that gene or that quality, whatever it is, it just can't be oppressed. It can't be suppressed, you know, not exactly sure what it is, whether it's like soul or spirit or something that just maybe having like a little bit of like genetic memory of like, hey, wait a second, you know, or just at least an understanding of history. So you don't really need to have all this flu, I guess, on some level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of us like share an interesting background, probably like you said, with like programming, or like with probably like some sort of like ritual abuse or something that took place in our childhood. And we also happen to be those kids that, like you were saying, Dani, were not interested in being told like what to do in a way that would like infringe upon like the things that we would normally do. You know, like we had boundaries, God forbid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that having the people, like really tough, respectable people in your life that are constantly challenging you like that, it's a nightmare while you're going through it. And it could cause some sort of, I guess, turbulence in your emotional life later down the road. But I think it ultimately leads to exactly what you're talking about, is just like that grit of asserting yourself, asserting your boundaries, and being your own person, and kind of just being unapologetic about that, while also being like respectful, and of course, you know what I mean? And like,
yeah, totally,
like cordial, you know what I mean? Like it's not a rebel in the sense that, you're walking in with no shoes and no shirt and expecting service. Like you're a rebel in a way that's like standing for some really incredible things that and concepts and ideas that a lot of us hold very dear. And I think that's why I don't know, getting all carried away here, but very exciting.
Let us please continue to stoke the Aquarius God complex. No, I'm just kidding. But I do have a question, and so I came to your work in 2020, which was probably the perfect time for me to come into some of those concepts astrologically too. There was a lot of emphasis on words, word magic, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. My question is, like, 'cause I've kind of heard your story on different channels about your experience going through the journalism paces as well, and like kind of being faced with almost, it sounds like what you were faced with in your gymnastics training.
Yeah.
In the journalism world of like, no, you actually have to be this one way. And if you don't homogenize yourself, and I'd just like to know if you want to share anything about your experience with that, how that's contributed to you, like getting louder and like fighting the good fight,
Yeah. I mean, journalism was always my passion. And I went to grad school for journalism, and I really wanted to be an investigative journalist and like fight injustice. And, I had really high hopes for it all. And then I went, my, like, even though I'm like a big mouth and I come off a certain way, I'm also really sensitive. And super sensitive to what's going on the planet. So my career as a journalist is marked by like intensely throwing myself into journalism and then hitting a wall of like, I can't take how fucked up the world is. I need to step away from all of it completely and not pay attention. So it's very like sink or swim that way. So like I was working at KPFK, Pacifica right after 9/11, and I was reporting the news and producing the news 5 days a week. And after, I ended up getting fired by the CIA, but I just like, I hit the wall of like, it's too messed up. So I go in and out, but I do have this like very frustrating and kind of crazy making devotion to justice, which is really embedded in my whole Gene Keys chart. So, but like, I kind of go in and out of hard news. And I think the first time I got really disillusioned, the first time was obviously when I got fired by the CIA plant, but then I was writing for...
That'll do it.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Fucking CIA, always ruining everything.
Seriously. But I wrote for the LA Weekly for 9 years, and I was they call me their Nutter Butter writer. So I wrote mostly about like art and consciousness and sex and weirdness. And I wasn't doing hard news, but I was, my editor was, and we were really good friends. And I was watching the way they were covering Obama's, like when he was running for president. And I would And I was doing my own reporting on the side. And I was like feeding my editor links and, you know, all the stuff that, you know, it's like conspiracy theory, whatever. And I was like, you have to, you know, you have to catch yourself up to speed on this, and you have to look at this and look who's funding him and this and that. And he ignored everything that I was sending him without looking at anything. And I remember at the time being like, but you're an editor of a newspaper. Like, even if you think I'm crazy, that's fine. You still have to look at this stuff and vet it. And he didn't. And no one there did. And the way that they covered the whole thing was so one-sided and fake and really frustrating.
Gosh, that is super annoying. And I feel like we can all relate to that feeling at this point. You know, maybe in 2014, the amount of people doing that now, like, okay, look, you really have to look at this. You really have to look at this, you know, like the amount of people that are doing that now. And I've been one of those people. I'm not one of those people anymore, just because I can't, you know what I mean? Like, at some point you got to step out of the way. You got to let people like choose to be ignorant if that's what they want to do. But it is super frustrating when that happens, for sure.
It's super frustrating. And I feel like, sure, people can be ignorant if they choose to. Journalists, no.
Not in that role.
Totally not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it would be great if everyone thought that way that was in journalism.
Oh my God.
As much integrity as Dani.
It's just so odd to me. Like, I have a really hard time, you know, and most of these people don't want to be my friend anymore anyway. But in terms of the tolerance, I understand that I need to deal with it with regular people, but when it comes to journalists, there's no excuse. Like, it's not okay.
Yeah. No, I think you have every right to feel that way. And I think that if we had a free press, which seems like so far off from where we are, as I'm saying it out loud, as the words are exiting my mouth, but like, it's like so stark. But, you know, if we had that, then a lot of the stuff that's going on now wouldn't be possible, because the media could be kind of like a public, you know, court of opinion.
Do you feel like that time in history that happened, Dani, like that was a really pivotal time for journalism to just kind of a collective say no to that? I mean, I know it had been kind of leaning that way anyways, but it seems like the more I think about it, just the Obama stuff, I don't know. It just really seems, I don't know.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think the turning point was when the papers started to sell advertising on their editorial pages. And like, so if you look at the history of journalism, like that's where it really went sideways. And I did have that experience when I lived in New Mexico for the first time from 2011 to 2014. And I had a column in the Santa Fe Reporter for a year. And I wrote an article about some shenanigans that were going on at 10,000 Ways, which at the time was like the big community gathering place where we all soaked. And because 10,000 Ways was a big advertiser, the editor of the paper sent my article to the owner of 10,000 Ways before it ran for comment, which is completely unethical.
My
super
gosh.
Unethical and disgusting.
Right. Crazy.
And then they changed the article based on his feedback. So, you know, that was like 2011 that happened. So when they started just pandering to advertising dollars over the truth, I think that was the real big slippery slope where it all went to hell.
Okay, so then I'm wondering how much the internet contributed to that, because I'm wondering, you know, we get all in that time in 2011, people were starting to get their news for free online. And then I know that newspapers and print media was scrambling. I'm just trying to, I don't know, put it all together. It's very interesting just how things kind of work out like that the advertising dollar was more necessary at that point than ever. And then also how corrupt it became. And I suppose there is in a perfect system, that dollar just wouldn't have been consulted, I guess, before the thing printed. But it is interesting to see how it all plays together and like the big old soup that the internet and the world are these days.
Yeah. And I think you make a really good point, because with the advent of the internet, that's when newspapers and magazines really started to struggle and then started to sell themselves down the river even more than they were. Because let's not kid ourselves. Like they've been compromised for a long time. But yeah, I think fighting for that readership has really allowed them to drop whatever, last shreds of integrity they might have been working with.
Those little strings. Yes.
It's really alarming to see the way that independent journalists and investigative journalists now who are actually like trying to do open and honest work. It's just really, I think that we've been so propagandized in this country that we are almost like we're used to it or something. But I think that it's really, and we make excuses for it. Some people do, not everybody, but it's really like the hallmark of a like totalitarian type of situation when there's not really any free press. And I guess like that's something that has been in the works for a long time, since before the internet, probably like thousands of years ago. But what do we do?
Yeah, I mean, you can see it if you track, sort of the Rockefeller Foundation's moves, and anytime we listen to NPR, which I don't think anyone believes is a bastion of integrist journalism at this point. But even back in the day, it was always sponsored by the Rockefeller Foundation and Gates and, all the sort of crummy players. But yeah, we cannot have a functional, healthy democracy without a free press. The press has always functioned as that extra check and balances on the other three pillars of government. And we haven't had a free press, which is why we don't have a democracy. And it's so frustrating watching like the old, kind of liberal elite continue to fight for, their silly New York Times or the Atlantic or the Washington Post. And it's like, you guys are dinosaurs at this point. You need to wake up and get current as to what's going
with the program.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then the last piece, just in terms of like, I mean, because I've been censored and had so many issues, but when I was in LA, I think it was 2019, I was assigned, because my, one of my old weekly editors was working for the Los Angeles magazine. And I was working on a feature article for them that I spent, I put a lot of effort into it. And when I turned it in, they said, well, we can't run this because it comes off as critical of the Me Too movement. And I was like, it was always going to be critical of the Me Too movement, and why all of a sudden is that a deal breaker? And that's when that whole that's when I woke up to the largesse of that like woke sham and identity politics, and was just like, wow, okay, I get it. Unless I'm towing the party line and just parroting everyone else's indoctrination, I'm not going to have a mainstream journalism career anymore. Got it.
Oh,
got it. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. And you said that was in 2019?
Yes.
Because that's definitely a time where like to try to get anything new going, like I just remember 2019 being kind of like the last dredges of several old cycles kind of closing up. And, obviously in 2020, we opened some new ones, but yeah, that's really interesting to just, I don't know, to really parse that apart, the whole identity politics thing. I have a lot of thoughts because I do come from that, like that world. I mean, I was like with all of that in like 2016, 2017. So I'm like, oh shit, you look back and you're like, oh, wow. Well, I was really in that like mind state to where I didn't care that conservatives were already being censored, and now I'm like, fuck, like, well, that sucks, but then I think coming into, I was going to say something else about, it was a good point too, but whatever, I'll let it flow down the river.
I think that the point you made is a really good point, because like we've been fragmented and polarized to think that like, well, it's okay if conservatives are being censored, right? Like that's like that right there is the issue, because if we think it's not going to happen to us,
that's right.
We're completely kidding ourselves. And like, that's what's so frustrating seeing now, of like people wishing harm on other people, and it's okay, these people are being censored. It's like, no, it's not okay for any groups to be censored at all, ever, because this is what it leads to. And I could see, you know, I started writing about identity politics, I mean, honestly, like for realsies in college, but like, you know, the first pitch that I got censored from Reality Sandwich, which I used to write for all the time, was when I wanted to take on Black Lives Matter in 2013. And they were like, no, that's a sacred cow, you're not allowed.
Yeah.
But I could see all of this prepping the groundwork for where we're at now, which is like moving into, you know, like a Fourth Reich camp apartheid situation. And I was really clear, like, they're seeding the groundwork for something really gross and really nefarious, and we need to unify now. But everyone thought I was crazy.
Oh my gosh. And to have that type of like foresight and to recognize, I mean, because you obviously were very educated, and it's so interesting how I find that the people that I can, you know, most talk to now are like not always super college educated. You know, there's a little bit there's like that whole, you can be so educated, but then are you wise? You know, like, are you listening? It's like it's a thing. And I think that the other part that I wanted to talk about with identity politics with you is like, it gets people so far out of their spirit and their soul, and like so deep into like almost like the most surface level things. And obviously, like, nobody can deny that there have been challenges on various groups since the beginning of time. That is like what, you know, humans have been under oppression for a long time in different ways. But I think like that it's so insidious how it takes you from like your deeper core and your inner wisdom, and then it kind of like inverts it and like puts it up near the surface and gets people really upset at things that are like, I would consider to be like maybe less serious, and takes a lot of, you know, pressure and eyes off of things that are like way more serious, that shouldn't be happening, that are like egregious. So good for you for seeing that early and like fighting the good fight for all of us. And, you know, like, we're catching up with you.
Thanks. You're like, I don't know that it did much good, but I tried. And
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, in terms of what you said about distracting us from bigger things, that's 100% by design.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
The only like silver lining of the us being divided thing is I've been noticing more and more people, because of how repetitive the mind control is and how it's just been, it was so intense in the beginning, not in the beginning, but like, you know, when it really got ahead at BLM, like the summer of all of that, I've noticed a lot of people growing like tired of it. And a lot of people of many different races, like all of them honestly, are just kind of over the conversation and just like they've grown wise to the tricks, and they are now looking at deeper things and realizing we have to unite. So in some ways it's kind of woken people up, just how vulgar and ridiculous and repetitive it all is, and how angry
and corporate
it makes people. And corporate, I think people are really seeing that, and I think people are starting to notice that Black Lives Matter TM like only comes out during election years. You know, like there's just certain things people are starting to get, and then along with getting that usually is like, oh, we're just like trying to, you know, resist like this bigger situation. We don't need to like hate each other. And so that's just on my end, something that's been, I guess, sort of cool after a year of this has gone on, to see kind of as the dust settles on like some of the biggest psyops we've ever been a part of, you know, all happening at one time. Like, oh, some people actually are getting it, and it's pretty great. You know, it got too ridiculous for them or something. I don't know.
Nice. I'm glad to know that that's what you're observing. That definitely gives me hope.
Yeah.
I'm also observing that. And sometimes I wonder, you know, is it selection bias? Because I refuse to interact at this point with people who are like extremely authoritarian. You know, I really came up against that in 2020 because I was like, yeah, I don't like whatever this is. I've been here before. I know what this is for whatever reason. Like, and I'm going to start being like, fuck this. You know, I lost a lot of people that are like very authoritarian because I don't feel like I should put up with that type of like, it's narcissistic abuse. Like when you like the authoritarian type of model.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that, and the way that they talk to you and stuff like that, because I knew like from jump, like I'm not going to participate in the Needlecraft, you know, like I'm not going to do that. Like whatever that is, I don't want to be a part of that. And I knew it from the jump. And I was like, they're going to make it that I just had like a lot of psychic impressions about it. And I, you know, knew that I wasn't going to do it. And I already in 2020 had people telling me that, this conspiracy, I'm selfish, you know, whatever. And like, we can see how far, you know, it's,
they love the word
gone.
Selfish.
Yeah.
They sure do. Even though I think it's pretty selfish to insist that everybody do a certain weird thing to get back to normal, which like, I don't remember if anybody remembers, we didn't like normal in 2019, you know, in pre-2020, we weren't like, normalcy, yay, like we were like, this is, you know, we were already kind of there. And then, you know, this,
I mean, how embarrassed were we all when like the Supreme Court justice like literally thought there were 100,000 children on ventilators? You know what I'm saying? It's like I was mortified like for the country because I was like, this woman is like guiding our legal system, and it's like, what other things does she think are true? You know what I mean? Like, I just opened Pandora's box for me on the authority. Like, I guess the Supreme Court. I thought medicine was my final frontier with authority, but I think it is the Supreme Court. Like, it's not that I'm against them at all. It's just that they have proven themselves in this one mistake, this one gap, to be like, I can question everything now because are you kidding me? That's ridiculous what you were thinking, you know?
Extremely ineffective. Yeah, she said that this bitch said, sorry, I just can't. She said that the Needlecraft passports will get rid of 100% of cases. Literally. What are you saying right now? And that's also something too that I think like Dani has shed so much light on is the word magic and the word inception, and listening to you talk about, you know, just the way that these ideas are like seeded through the language has just been such a game changer for me. I actually listened to some of your stuff and then I'm like, well, shit, I should watch the way that I talk to myself and like about myself and in life. I think language we just have no idea like the impact that it has. It's literally spelling our existence until we, you know.
And it's so wild because you just now, I've been hearing a few more people mention quantum languaging, but I heard you talking about it years ago, Dani, because it was something you were like literally doing. And so Dani was officially living in the future.
Yes, Dani is from the future.
Something. Yes. Yeah. That's so awesome. It's really, really helpful. So Dani, I've noticed in some of your work, you've mentioned the 144,000, or like the theme of that. And I was wondering what that meant to you. And I guess let's just start there and go from there.
I'm trying to think, because I know that came up recently. Oh, I know what you're talking about. I mean, yes, I live in the future pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, with how crazy the world has gotten, it's just more and more realizing like, I'm not like these people.
Yes.
You know, what's going on? Like, why do some of us get it? Why are some of us loving? Why are some of us, you know, more concerned about the well-being of all of us instead of just our political party? And so I think that the 144,000 is just like shorthand. If it's just that we're the star seeds, or we were the first ones, like I can't claim to actually know.
Of course. Yeah, that's kind of what I was going for. That's kind of how I've envisioned it too, is just sort of like a shorthand for something else that's like, but I think at this point, and I don't mean this in a way that's like exclusive, but I think at this point, so many of us, especially if you're listening to this, definitely include yourself in this, and definitely beyond, there is something that is like just so different. I don't know if it's our makeup. I don't know if it's similar upbringing. I don't know if it's all of it. I don't know if it's genetics, but there's something going on, and there's some sort of activation happening where all of us, it seems like everyone is getting better and more sensitive and smarter, and their production levels are going up, and their situations are either improving, or they're being supported. You know what I mean? Like I feel protected in sort of a way. And I don't know if that's even like divinely, or just because like the people that actually genuinely share these concepts and beliefs about the world and consciousness and whatever and humanity, or they just share them, so they attract each other, and so it's working in that way. But it's definitely, there's a vibe to the 144,000 concept or archetype or whatever. And I'm whenever I hear about it, it's not about being special, but it's about just kind of this like verification of something that feels internally very true. But also it's almost like more true, because you're seeing, I mean, everyone that I'm surrounded by at this time is even like down to my mom and my man. Everyone's going through these like incredible improvements and like just things, and not in any particular way. Maybe it's like they feel better, they're dealing better with certain things, or they're lighter spirit, or, it's like, it's not necessarily like physical, monetary kind of stuff. It's just like the way they carry themselves, that kind of stuff. And so it's been really incredible to witness it happening to so many different people at the same time. It kind of makes me, wonder, get bigger with my ideas of what this is. But I've talked a long time. Go ahead, someone.
Well, I think it's the, one of the upsides of, the pandemic is that we've been able to recognize one another all the more easily. And I also think, I appreciated what you said as far as the audience, and like, if you're listening, then this applies to you too. And this is something, because obviously, I've been using social media for quite some time, but it's really only in the past couple of years that I realized, like, people who are resonating with what I'm saying are my tribe, and we are the 144,000. And I'm starting to get, because I think for so long, I've been doing this for such a long time, and I didn't have an audience for a long time. So for me, my process is like, just keep doing it, just keep doing it, just keep doing it. And I'm not really necessarily tracking who I'm attracting or who's connecting with it. But this past couple of years, I really have, and I'm realizing, like, we speak each other's language. We're from the same star system. We share a mission. Like we're creating something new together. And it's become, like, it's a lot more meaningful than I had given it credit for.
Absolutely.
And realizing that, like, that's why, like, when you guys invited me on the show, and I have been on, because I'm still recovering, I've been on, like, I know I'm not doing any podcasts, but I'm like, these are my tribe, like, of course, like, that's yes, because, like, we're of the same star family. So that's something that I've really gotten from this pandemic, is being able to recognize who's in it with me.
I think that, like, people are really the contrast that came in, like, for me, really visually, like last year, say I'm going through the grocery store or something, or I guess, like, interacting online, whatever, like, or, going out somewhere, you can see people who are dead behind their eyes, literally, or like they are missing like some of their like higher energy centers. And then you can see people who are like glowing, gleaming, glistening, and it's just a really interesting type of difference to observe. It's very stark. Like, I think my friend, who is an astro-theosophical Christian, it's a big word. Like, he's just like an unconventional esoteric Christian, whatever. So he mentioned to me, he was like, well, you know, Meredith, like when all hell breaks loose, so too shall all heaven. And I'm like, wow, like that's really a thing. It's definitely a both and situation going on,
Definitely.
at least in my life.
Well, and that's the beauty of living in duality, is like, as shitty as everything is as wonderful as it is, and it cannot not be.
Yeah.
That's
kind of, I think the move lately is starting to really kind of bridge the shit and the great like together, and try to just like enjoy the whole experience for what it is, and find meaning in the things you can, and, you know, be a part of something that's meaningful if that's what it is for you. But I think that that's kind of the vibe lately, for sure. Is bridging the opposites.
Totally.
And no,
go ahead.
Amy, go ahead. You go ahead, girl.
Well, I was just going to ask you, how about we go this? I'm going to ask, and then Mary, you ask, and we'll see what's more relevant.
No. You just ask, and I
just want to know about quantum languaging. Can you give like a brief idea about quantum languaging? And then the other thing I wanted to ask is about your book, Pop Propaganda, that's available for purchase. Maybe we can start there, because that's actually incredibly, incredibly relevant and insanely informative, and everyone should run out and get it, because it's a great gift or just personal reader. It's so informative.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So as you want me to start with Pop Propaganda? Is that right?
Why don't we do that? Because that's like out right now, and
So I had been it had been on my to-do list for a couple of years to start creating curriculum for children. And I was asked last fall, I was asked in the summer to start teaching a class for homeschoolers. And so like, you know, the fear was like, no, I don't know how to do that. But, you know, I was like, of course, the answer is yes, and I'll figure it out. So for that group of parents, they really wanted to teach their kids media literacy. And a lot of the parents, which I've heard from so many parents the past couple of years, and not all of them by any means, but some of the parents were kind of competing with their kids being taken by, you know, some of the sleepier ideologies. So, so I decided to teach a pop propaganda class. And as I was teaching the class, like I completely fell in love with the students and completely fell in love with teaching teenagers. And I also got incredibly frustrated that there wasn't a textbook for them. So the book just kind of get, you know, like a lot of my creations are not, it's not like my cognitive mind. It's just like something has to claw its way out of me at warp speed. And that's what this book was. So I ended up getting hit with the bioweapon, and I was like, great, I can cancel everything. And I just busted the book out in 3 weeks. So it's called Pop Propaganda, an Illustrated Guide. It's a compendium. It's not exhaustive. It's 37 propaganda tools, tricks, and techniques. It was hand-drawn and handwritten, and it's intended for teens and grown-ups alike. I really worked hard to make the languaging easy for teenagers to understand. And the gist is just to wake all of us up to the tricks that are being used.
It's so brilliant. I wish I could have had you in high school. I wish I would have had a mind like that, because I was already kind of leaning, you know, in that direction, and I would have loved this as a class. That is so incredible.
That's really fun.
And I also love that the youth are being shaped by your words and thoughts. Like, that is very comforting to me as a person
which
who
really
has to live on this earth.
And like, you're such the type of person too to incentivize someone, not incentivize them, but encourage them to think their own thoughts. You know, you want to like give somebody the space to decide for themselves, kind of outside of the, you know, neoliberal type of like hive mind belief structure. You kind of give teenagers a space to, you know, to empty their mind a little bit of some of that trash, you know. And then also I want to say, did you get hit with the bioweapon, or did the bioweapon get hit with you? Because then you came out with this book like slaughtering all of the things. You know? It's kind of funny.
I like that. I like that framing. Yeah, I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you, about the quantum languaging, was there anything that you wanted to kind of throw in about that? Just a kind of overview of maybe what it is, so people can, when they want to check it out, they can, or go to your website and check it out, they can, you know, have a little background.
Yeah, totally. So quantum languaging, I think when, you know, because I do so many things, and you guys did ask me about human design at the beginning. So according to human design, I am a 5/1 manifesting generator, which means it's actually appropriate for me to do all the things. Because there are times when people are like, it's crazy, you do too many things. And I'm like, no, it's actually really appropriate for my design. It just seems crazy.
Love that.
But I think in terms of all the things that I do, like quantum languaging is really my baby. And I feel, you know, I got sucked into it throughout the years, but I do feel a devotion to the language. And I'm committed to being a custodian of the language, and I'm also committed to helping us evolve the language. So quantum languaging is the name that I gave to this system of study and practice, wherein we're utilizing words not just from our cognitive mind as like means of communication, but we're really examining words by way of their energetic frequencies and the effects that those various frequencies and the coding embedded in those frequencies has on us as people, on other people, and on the quantum field at large. And my general perspective about it is that we're dealing with an outdated language. And like, it's very clear that the culture is inviting a complete overhaul right now. But, and my perspective is, let's overhaul the language first, because anything that we create through an outdated, distorted language is going to express the same distortions and the same issues.
Absolutely.
So we have all these people who are talking about all the changes that they want to make. And this was really the crux of the article that Los Angeles Magazine wouldn't write. It's like, we have to evolve out of hierarchy, out of competition, out of lack, out of fear, out of limitation, out of inversions. And because all of that's embedded in our old language, like anything that we create from that language is still gonna express the inversions, the fear, the limitation, the scarcity, all of it. So my quantum languaging work is to turn people on to how language is functioning on all these different levels. And that does mean our self-talk. You know, Meredith, I think you mentioned that earlier, of like wanting to overhaul the way that we're thinking and the way that we're talking about ourselves. And also, you know, teaching people that every single word matters, every single word. So there's not a thought we have that God's like, oh, I didn't hear that, that doesn't count. You know? And so really helping people understanding how this technology is shaping their entire worldview and their entire perspective. And that's what I'm really most passionate about of everything that I do. I just tend to be called into doing all these other things at the same time.
So let's get into that. Let's open that manifesting generator container up, because so I love human design. I'm pretty obsessed with it right now. It's kind of like when I first found astrology and just like wanted to absolutely devour it. And I've noticed that because my type is very weird, I tend to have a strong love and appreciation for generators and manifesting generators, and sometimes also jealousy, because you guys have so much energy and like just abundance of energy. So it's really important for all the generators out there to like actually use all of your energy. When a manifesting generator is on fucking fire, and like when a manifesting generator is aligned, it's almost like you could pretty much like be in a constant inhale, exhale with the universe, like a constant dance of life. And I just think that's, you know, it's harder for a mental projector to arrive at that kind of ease and flow. But I wonder, like, if I were to say, maybe try for like 3 days to completely be aware of all of the thoughts and all of the words that I'm having, I wonder, the differences and the shifts that could make. I mean, that would be pretty tedious, but like, what are your thoughts on like just completely taking a reset of like 3 days to just be very, because I'm sure you think of, or you probably are pretty aware of what you say as somebody who's a quantum languaging extraordinaire to the world, but so
yeah, I mean, I think it's ongoing. Like I do think every word we say, every word we think has a direct effect on our reality. 100%. There's no getting around it. And so, I think a 3-day reset would be great. And I also think it's a lifetime reset because we all have blind spots, and we're going to
totally
show up differently in different situations and with different people. There are different like alchemical dynamics that are going to bring forward different belief systems, different traumas, different, personality configurations.
So interesting.
It's an ongoing listening, and when it comes to like my coaching and my consulting, I'm just listening to every word, I'm listening with, I call it a 5D ear. And so I can hear when there's like space between what the person is intending or saying they mean, and then the actual words they're saying. And like that space between what we're actually saying and what we're claiming we want, like that's everything. And when we clean up that space, when we become really mindful of our languaging and tune into how we're sabotaging ourselves all day, every day, like that's when life changes, like in real, tangible ways.
Absolutely. I have a couple of other things. Sorry, Amy. But
that's okay. I only have one more question and then I will end it with that because I think it's a good end question. So go ahead, Mary, you know what you asked away. Thanks so much, Dani.
So they're not really questions, but maybe more just like conversation points to jump off of, should you choose. Like, so Ross said that the creator of human design, that in 2027, we're like working up to this mutation. It's like basically he called that like the human species as we know it wouldn't be the same, whatever that looks like. And I think there's probably a few different things that probably looks like, but he said that, all of the systems that we rely upon, I was just listening to this, so it's kind of an interesting sync. He said all the systems that we rely upon are going to fail us miserably. So you want to be able to focus on your individual strategy, individual authority. And that's kind of, I guess, the point for him to bring down that system was because of this mutation. So one of the things that he said was that the internet was going to cease to work. So if people want to like basically learn all that they can through books, through internet, things like that, from 2027, he said the background frequency changes. I never give 100%, credence to prophecy really until I see it. But he said that it was going to be oral traditions from the way forward. And, that makes me really excited at the prospect that perhaps we might get to seed that new language. Like maybe we could decide how some of those traditions and some of those words of wisdom are going to be carried down, for future generations. So that's one thing. It's just an interesting synchro. What if we were to change altogether the language that we even use to perpetuate maybe our own mythologies as we've lived them and seen them,
Yeah, it's definitely my plan. And that, that's what I'm doing while I'm here. The book that I'm writing, I took a break from the book that I have been writing for the past couple of years to bust out pop propaganda. But that book is called, right now the working title is The Language of Betterarchy, because in that book, I'm focusing on how, you know, going back.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you. Going back to like briefly when we were talking about identity politics and woke nonsense, you know, when I was examining that pretty hardcore for a while, and I realized like rearranging the puzzle pieces of a broken game doesn't fix the game. So like expecting white men to take short shrift while putting like Black women or trans people on top, like doesn't fix the game. We're just organizing it. But if we need there to be losers for there to be winners, then we're all losing, and it's a shitty game that really needs to be redesigned. So that had me examining hierarchy, and like the real problem is hierarchy. And so then I was examining the language, and I think, you know, in nature, there is such a thing as organic hierarchy, you know, like the cheetah's going to run faster than the mole. And, you know, that's just natural. But
we're not
have
all the same.
What was that?
I just said we're not all the same. Like, so it's like there's going to be a natural hierarchy. Exactly. Even in humans, you can see it. Yeah. Sorry.
Totally. It's natural, but our language is rife with contrived, forced hierarchy. And what that does is creates friction and conflict among us, and it creates a really disempowered populace. So the aim of this book is to unearth the contrived hierarchy in our language and to shift it. And I'd spent like literally years trying to figure out what the upgrade was. And I realized I don't know what it is. So I'm just going to call it betterarchy until we figure out what it is. But we're not going to figure it out until we've rooted all the unnatural hierarchy out of the language and we're speaking a more equal, empowered, respectful, abundant language together. So that's why I'm calling it the language of betterarchy.
I love betterarchy because it makes me think of like, I can do it better, which isn't necessarily I can do it better to shame you or to show you up. It's just, I can do it better. So I'm going to do this thing because I can do it better. Yeah. I love that.
Exactly.
I love it.
So so that's my plan in, you know, with as many sunspins as I may or may not have left, it's to resource humanity with as many tools as I can. And so I have, you know, there's the language of betterarchy. I have the language of eternity, the language of healing. It's just to create as many of these books and tools as possible while I can, so that future generations have a new language that they can create with.
Oh my gosh, this gets me so excited to be a part of like the time that we're a part of, and just thinking about the idea, that like generations could be reading your books, Dani, and it really could be just like lightening the shit. You know what I mean? Just one more person doing that every day or every other day or however, like just kind of the light turning on for language or for whatever gets me really excited and very, very cool.
Yay.
When I was, sorry, Amy, I just have one more thing and then
girl, go ahead.
Wrap it however you want to wrap it. But I was in a yoga teacher training a long time ago, and we had a Sanskrit teacher, and it was really interesting how I just want to touch on again, like that you said that the frequency of certain tones, certain sounds as you're making them even is important in shaping our reality. And it just made me think of this example of, you know, that my teacher gave at the time. She said, it's literally like the difference between the sh sound, you know, which is calming to the nervous system, and the sound is like there's a snake or like something's not right. You know, there's a difference in those two sounds. And, you know, it kind of makes me wonder sometimes about the origins of our language, the English language, you know, just because it seems it's very like it doesn't hit all of those points on the roof of the mouth. You know what I'm saying? Like it kind of seems like it's intended to keep us where we are.
Yes. I love that you brought this up because I'm fascinated by the origin of our language. And I'm always, you know, as you guys know, and I think we all share this, is like kind of a conspiratorial line where I'm like, is the English language always fucked up, or did someone come in and fuck it up? Like, what happened there? And I think there's, you know, Sanskrit is obviously one of the root languages, and it's so powerful. And something that not everyone knows is, you know, I have this obnoxiously ginormous gap in between my front teeth. I didn't have that until it started to grow in 2009, when a shaman that I was working with gave me these Sanskrit chants to start chanting every day. And I think it was
your teeth.
It moved my teeth.
Holy shit, that is crazy.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, talk about a powerful language.
Yeah. Wow.
I will say, just as a personal little anecdote, and it could be totally meaningless, but as I have like done spiritual development, I have noticed in my recorded voice, maybe over the last 10 years, that my S's have become less hard, not like a sh, but like they're not as hard as they used to be. And I've been wondering about I wonder, because the sound S and the snake and just like, I don't know, the duality and all that kind of stuff that you can get lost in for hours, and like, you know.
So interesting.
Yeah, archetypal text and stuff. But it always made me wonder, like, does your S like soften as like you kind of, I don't know, shed? I don't know.
As you evolve.
Yeah, as you,
how does
how
does your mouth change as you evolve?
Yes, yes.
Well, I think that does make sense though, because as we evolve and expand, we also become more sensitive. And I don't know if it's just 144,000 weirdos. Right. Everyone, but you know, like, it's all becoming so much more multidimensional and so much more complex. So I think that definitely relates to how we're using our voices, how we're enunciating, you know, I think it just crosses all the realms of our experience.
Absolutely. And can we put a pin in the 144,000 weirdos as title for this episode?
Yes.
The best thing I've ever heard.
144,000 aliens. Okay.
Yes. I guess in our final question to you, I really, I've been following earlier this year when you were unable to sell your wares online. And I was wondering if either that had been improved, or maybe we could get a backstory on why, like, what kind of stuff as a dangerous woman were you publishing that they could not support?
Oh,
danger.
Which stuff? Remind me.
Oh, it was about maybe a month or two ago, and the whole story, it was like your link tree or something like that had totally just
they took down my link tree, right? Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that was because of the podcast that Emily and I did, where I did the like ridiculous chart with Joe Rogan and the Santa Fe Institute and Daniel Schmachtenberger.
Yes.
And I think that was what got my Linktree taken down like right before the holidays, and I didn't even realize, like, I have no idea how long it was down before someone mentioned it. So it was just like great timing for no one to be able to find like my books, my products, my anything.
They didn't want your crazy rebellious vibe, your crazy authentic vibe, like hitting the airwaves before the Christmas season. They couldn't handle all that power.
Exactly.
That struggle is real. That struggle is so real. Amy has been she has been my rock through that type of time. It's new for me to be censored or like suppressed. And so I'm just like, you know, it's the struggle, you know.
It's so frustrating. I mean, I'd really
it is.
I know. And I just think of how many, like, it's why I took all my videos off of YouTube, because I was getting censored so much, and I would waste my every therapy session just like railing against big tech. And then I realized I'm doing this, like, I'm signing on to this abusive relationship. My only move is to step away.
There you go, girl. Yes.
Yeah. So now I'm in the process of setting up a locals page. And my goal this year is to just like get myself more established in tech sovereignty, just for peace of mind. Like, you know, it's just to save myself the telomere length and the frustration of it.
Absolutely.
It's really hard. Like I mean, because I don't even have that much of a following. I'm like, well, who cares? Why am I having like files deleted off of my computer? And like, it's a really weird.
They went into your computer?
I don't really know, but I had multiple, like within like 2.5 weeks, I had multiple files just like deleted from my computer.
Oh no. No.
And I'm not even anybody, and I don't even know who it is. Like, so I'm just, or what happened. I feel like my kooky ass is like, well, the spirit of the internet, genuinely, that's like what my read on it is. So I don't really have this, like, I don't know if it's any, I don't know, but yes, that happened. And, it's just, there is a special type of frustration though that does just come along with that. So just validating that's super fucking annoying and very real. And I'm sorry that you have ever had to go through that.
I'm so sorry. Dealing with it too. It just sucks straight up.
Yeah, it's too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so the best way to do that, obviously, is to not engage with them, which is like the most power move I've heard. And so, what are you doing to kind of facilitate more digital sovereignty for yourself? Because that's a big theme we have here too, is how do we work with this stuff or not, so we don't work against it. We just want to exist harmoniously with it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, I was pretty loud with Linktree, and I know other people who get censored are like, it's not worth it, but I feel like, I don't know. I don't go gently into any.
I hear you.
Yes.
And I did get an apology from them after like a month of being a psycho. But at that point, I'd already chosen a different platform for it. So, I took my stuff off of YouTube, and now I'm on Odyssey and BitChute, which frankly, like, they all suck. Like, YouTube had. I didn't understand until I took my videos off, like how great YouTube actually was. But for me, my freedom's more worth it. So
hell yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm on Odyssey and BitChute, and I did lose like thousands of subscribers, and it is what it is. I had my Tumblr blogs. Those were taken down without any more. Yeah, which sucked. And to this day, no one from that company has told me why or what it was. So right now, the way I'm doing it now is like, I'm not putting anything on Instagram, because at this point, that's my biggest platform that's gonna piss them off. But so now I just started like driving people and saying, go check this out, go check this out, and invite because it's just not worth it. And,
it's a way to kind of like use their power against them. Like, okay, I know what you're going to do, so I'll just talk around it and then go post it somewhere else, or how it's just kind of being more slick about how you do things these days. I totally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I do still feel like I'm on thin ice with them. As I'm sure we all do. And I'm just, like, they get away with so much nonsense. So that's why I stopped posting controversial, like, links and stuff, and I moved it over to Telegram. But, like, I have 250 people on my Telegram versus like 8,400 on Instagram, so it's a shift for sure.
Right.
But I feel like at this point, like, this year, my peace of mind is more important. So that's where, like, Emily and I are moving over to locals. I'm moving over to locals.
Good.
I'm going to continue to try to herd people over there and just keep it as light as possible on Instagram, so as to not incur their wrath. I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Do you have like a word that you start your year with, or like that you program the year with?
This year, my word is reciprocation.
Hell yeah, reciprocity in all things.
Totally, because last year was a big lesson in burnout and overgiving, and I'm really excited to switch that up.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you're worth it too, and I think that, like, something that was recently kind of conveyed to me in an experience that I had was like, if your heart is beating for like everyone else but you, you know, it's not gonna, that shit does not work, you know? So, I think, yeah, I had a thought, but it went away. Oh, well.
I always say this. It's
So
like in the
goes.
airplane when it's going down. I've never had this happen, but from what I understand, like there's masks that come down for oxygen. And I guess the mothers, they are told to put the oxygen mask on themselves first before they put it on their child, which is like, oh, that's a real order of operations right there. You got to take care of yourself so you can take care of others. Otherwise, you can't be here to do all like the nourishing quantum languaging that you're gonna plant into our freaking reality. I'm so excited.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm also like, I think the other piece, and you mentioned this briefly in terms of being a manifesting generator and being able to do so many things, is like this very like masculine Western be productive all the time. And after I finished my propaganda book, I reached out to someone to be on his podcast to promote it. And he's like, okay, we can promote that. What else do you have going on? And I was like, fuck you. Like, I just want to book. That's enough. And he's like, well, let's wait till you're doing like, you know, a workshop or a course. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Like I wrote a book and that's plenty. That's plenty. So I'm noticing like how much of a shift it is for me to be like, I'm doing enough and I'm not going to jump through all these crazy Western hoops to like dazzle the world. I'm good.
You're also living in the future where that's the preferred way of living what you're doing. So obviously that guy just needs to get with the damn program, right? You know?
Sure does.
Get in that time machine and go live in the future and understand.
Oh,
yes.
I could freaking like go off about that because I am a projector. So I literally can't do that, what you guys do. And even like, I mean, you are doing way more than like most people. I mean, not that it's not a contest, it's not a hierarchy, but it is like, you know, you are doing enough. But like the idea that like somebody would add more on top of that, I scoff at the likes of such things at this point, you know. Like our energy is valuable and our time and that kind of thing. And I think it's, you know, important to really recognize that and seal that in. Amy, did you have a word for 2022?
You know, I really didn't, but if I were to have a word, it sounds so silly. It's the audacity, because I just feel like, I feel like it's not a bad thing to have the audacity. It's kind of like in the lexicon right now, which is really cool. And also like right now is the time to have the audacity to do things, whether that is something I prefer or not, you know? So that's up to the audacitor, if you know, as it were. So
you are the most audacious bitch that ever lived, that ever walked truly. My word was rise. And yeah, because I was like, you know what, like I'm just ready to like level up. And 2022 has not been a disappointment so far in the first like 19 days in that way. Like I feel like I'm like, oh well, I chose this word, so you know, the price I pay for the life I choose. No, but because it does, like your lessons sort of grow to the word that you choose. Absolutely. Most of the time.
Absolutely.
Which is really just a testament to what all this is about, you know?
Every word matters.
And that's
every word matters.
And that's that.
Beautiful. Well, Dani, we've talked a few times about where people can find you, but can you run over it again? Because I really cannot stress it enough that the material you put out is so good. And just personally, when the whole plague started happening, I was really kind of like, I don't know if I wanted to watch Plandemic, because sometimes things are heavy-handed. And once I found out you were a part of it, my whole like idea of what it was shifted, because I respect the research that you do. It's very, very valid. It's incredibly, and you go places that no one goes and you explain it in ways that no one else can explain it. And you also have some audacity in the best of ways. I've heard you on podcasts even more lately, really just like standing up and holding your ground to some like really powerful heavy hitters. And I'm like, gosh, she is doing it. Like my jaw drops sometimes just like listening to you like really stand your ground on stuff. And I'm like, yes, this is some power. And I can see why you might be 2021's most dangerous woman. So yeah, let everyone know where they can find the most dangerous woman on the internet right now.
Thank you. You can find me at danikatz.com. My quantum languaging site is quantumlanguaging.com. The links for my podcast are not on my site. So it's easiest to find those on the off-brand link tree on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram at something.dani. And I'm in the process of updating all of that on my site, but you can find most everything else through my danikatz.com site or my quantumlanguaging.com site.
Excellent. Sweet. Yay. And we'll have all of that in the show notes also. So you can buy her book, you want to.
No, but I want you to.
You really
I think
should.
The more people, yes, the better.
No, but really do it. Do it. No, but just kidding. Okay, well, you guys have a lovely evening. It was really good to talk to you. And thank you so much for listening, everybody.
Thank you guys for having me. Bye.
Bye.